What have you learned about this collision, and what do you believe went wrong?
Well, right now I'm gonna hold my judgment, let the NTSB and FAA do their jobs in terms of the investigation. Some of the things that we are looking at that I've requested from the FAA from the call is a transcript of the air traffic control instructions and responses. What I did learn was that air traffic control did contact and speak with the helicopter crew twice, and they acknowledged the instructions twice. I also am asking for the flight path of both aircraft up until the moment of the impact. And of course, we're also got an update, unfortunately, on the recovery efforts for the victims that are still ongoing, and it's going to take a while yet.
You know very intimately what it's like to be in a Black Hawk. You also know what it's like to be in a Black Hawk when it goes down. What goes through your mind in a moment like that?
Well, our soldiers are the best trained in the world, and they would have been doing their jobs and everything that they could until their very last moment to do their jobs and stick with the training that they've received. I have every confidence in that helicopter crew that they are well trained. They wouldn't be out there in this special airspace. The airspace around Washington, D.C., especially this inner ring, is called the SFRA, the Special Flight Restricted Area. You don't get to fly in that without additional flight training, so we know that this is a trained crew that was in there. We just have to just be patient, let the accident investigators do their job, and we'll figure out what happened.
Does this bring up any trauma in any way for you personally?
Well, it does, and the fact of the matter is I every time I put myself back in that cockpit, back in that seat I sat in for thousands of hours along with my crew, and making sure, and I knew that those folks were looking outside the aircraft, looking for the passenger plane, that they were doing their job up until the very last moment. They would not have, panicked or quit, and that's the best that you can hope for, and that is what our military is trained for. And so I just want people to know that we have some of the best trained air crew in the world in the U.S. Army.
Take us inside of the cockpit. I mean, what is it like, particularly if you are flying in a populated area like Washington and at night?
Well, the crew members would have split up the crew duties. One person would have been actually physically flying the aircraft, which takes all of your four limbs to do it. You're controlling the direction of the aircraft with your right hand, the power that's going into the engines with your left hand. You're controlling the nose and the tail of the aircraft with your 2 feet. And so you're actually flying the aircraft, trying to stick to the route that you have to stick to. The other pilot, whoever is taking on those duties, will be talking with air traffic control. Everybody's looking outside the aircraft to try to find that other aircraft that you are near. The crew chief in the back is also doing the same thing. They're looking out of the aircraft as well, spotting any traffic that's nearby, conveying that information. So the crew would be talking to each other while also listening to the air traffic controller, and also listening to the air traffic controller talking to other aircraft, so that you have situational awareness of everything else that's going on. That aircraft, where they have a hard deck, we used to call it, which is they're not allowed to go above 200 feet mean sea level. So they were flying pretty low above the Potomac River at the time, while looking up, trying to spot out of this very busy night sky the landing airplane.
And is this something that would require night vision goggles, and how might that help an operation or a training mission like this?
Well, they could be flying with night vision goggles. My understanding is that they were not using NVGs. NVGs can, sometimes in this area where there's a lot of lights, not as useful a tool, and really, as it is if you're flying out in a combat situation in the dark, then you want night vision goggles. But with that much ambient light, they were on visual flight rules, and they were operating well within the parameters for which they have been trained and the aircraft was designed to operate in.
Is there any way this plane could not have seen the helicopter?
So the aircraft would have had its lights on, and so they would have had their position lights on, so the landing airplane would have been able to see them. But remember that the airplane is coming in for landing. They had the right of way. They would have been looking towards the runway and landing on the runway. That's the job of the crew within the American Airlines flight. They had been told they had the right of way, so that's their main job at that point, was to land the aircraft, and they were on a short final to land. I'm sure they would have been looking out, but they don't have the same visibility in that aircraft, looking out those 2 little windows that they have, as the helicopter would have had with you're basically sitting in a plexiglass bubble in the Black Hawk, with plexiglass above your head, underneath your feet, and out the two sides. So the helicopter crew would have had a better visual than the American Airlines flight, which was landing, looking to the runway.
I believe the new Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has described this as an elevation issue. We also heard from the president earlier today saying, well, the helicopter could have gone up, it could have gone down. I mean, is it that easy for a chopper to move up or down or get out of the way?
We have to let NTSB and FAA do their jobs. I mean, neither the president nor Mr. Hegseth are pilots, as far as I know. And I think that amateur speculation is not what is needed at this point. We need to figure out what happened because we want to learn from it so that we can fix the problem, so that we make sure this does not happen again. That aircraft has very specific parameters that they were operating on that helicopter route. And we'll see if they were adhering to those parameters that are set forward for them.
With respect to President Trump's remarks, he seemed to take aim at former President Obama, former President Biden, Democrats for DEI policies, suggesting that this could have been to blame for the crash. How do you respond to that?
That's an attack on those pilots. And how dare the commander-in-chief of the greatest military in the face of the earth attack the soldiers who just died last night by saying that he's implying that they were not qualified to do their jobs. He's implying that they were substandard as aviation aircrew member, because as if they had that position because of some other initiative that had nothing to do with their qualifications and capabilities as aircrew members. I am offended that the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military would actually say that about the soldiers that he has sworn to lead. Shame on him.
And then lastly, I know you've talked a lot about aviation safety and really have sounded the alarm over the last year or two, particularly about this issue of congestion at airports like Reagan National. In terms of what happened last night, is this one of your worst fears realized?
Yeah, this is one of my worst fears realized. We've known that the air traffic in this country is congested, that we do not have enough air traffic controllers, that our air traffic control systems, the equipment needs to be updated. That's why in a very bipartisan bill, we passed FAA reauthorization last year and put a lot of money into it for training up more air traffic controllers, for training up more pilots, for investing in upgrading our air traffic control system. Now, DCA does have the radar, the surface radar systems that we want installed all over the country, but it doesn't help when you have federal grant stoppage like the Trump administration has right now that says they're not going to let federal grants go out, when those grants are exactly what's going to go to pay for air traffic controller training. And the recent memo that was sent out, I believe by Elon Musk, asking federal employees to quit their jobs and take a buyout and go sit at home and not work but get paid until September. That went to air traffic controllers as well. My understanding is some air traffic controllers received those letters telling them to quit their jobs. And these are folks who are responsible, I believe, for air traffic on the eastern seaboard as well. So we need to just, in this case, let the accident investigators do their jobs. Let's invest in the workforce so that we have a much more a safe air traffic control system. We have the safest system in the world, but let's continue to make the investments to keep it that way.